We are Child Abuse Group 2. My name is Jonathan Gallegos.
My name is Tatum Bernardoni.
My name is Kirsten Clark.
My name is Jenny Nguyen.
Did you know? A report of child abuse is made every 10 seconds. In 2014, state agencies found an estimated 702,000 victims of child maltreatment. This would pack 10 modern football stadiums.
How does the United States and New Mexico identify child abuse? There are 5 important factors that we look at: physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and abandonment. Physical abuse is any intentional bodily harm. Neglect is not giving the child the needed food, clothing, shelter, medical care, or supervision. Sexual abuse is defined differently. However, in New Mexico, it is defined as human trafficking and prostitution. And then we have emotional abuse, which is that causes emotional instability with words. And abandonment is when the child is not with the parent. So in New Mexico, the law requires that physician, law enforcement officer, judge, nurse, school teacher or official, social worker, clergy to report any mandatory or anybody who's suspected of child abuse. It's also important to consider that if you are not able to report child abuse, then you get 1 year in jail, fine up to $1,000.
USA has an overwhelming rate of child abuse, but we have laws protecting the rights of children. We examined East Asia and specifically Bangkok to compare perceptions of child abuse. The following image is a child disciplined in school by his teacher. In cross-referencing East Asia to America, what we discovered is that there were no specific laws in East Asia protecting children against abusive work, such as sweatshops, child prostitution, and child pornography. The Bureau of International Labor Affairs is trying to eradicate these heinous acts and ensure that laws will be in place by 2020. Child abuse is an international problem. However, the USA has the most regulation and laws protecting the lives of children. 6 factors that contribute to child abuse are as follows: parents' lack of understanding the needs of a child, parents' history of child abuse, substance abuse, social class and socioeconomic standing, mental illness and health in home, and finally, non-biological caregivers in the home. Immunizations and frequent checkup appointments ensure that a child is properly developing. Regular monitoring of an infant's development might help a physician identify a neurological problem and lessen the impact of developmental delay by referring a child to an early intervention program. The psychological state of an infant. Fulfilling the infant's need for love and security is essential to healthy emotional growth. A consistent and dependable environment is the foundation for developing self-esteem and the ability to process emotion in future endeavors. So much of our biosocial and psychosocial characteristics are inherited from our parents, making the psychological state of an infant very important. Throughout the observation of many studies, I have observed a strong correlation between children who were abused developing into adults who are neglectful. This includes emotional, physical, and sexual abuse tendencies. Illegal substances alter the ability to critically think and function properly, therefore lead to neglect and potential aggression towards the family and/or children. According to the National CDC, children whose parents abuse alcohol and other drugs are 3 times more likely to be abused and more than 4 times likely to be neglected than children from non-abusing families. With lower socioeconomical families, the money and ability to supply children is potentially deficient. Low income often translate into poor nutrition and poor education of health sciences. Crime and drug use is elevated in lower social classes, which could potentially be responsible for the correlation of child abuse and neglect. A parent is responsible for providing a safe and healthy environment for their developing child. If a parent's health is compromised, a child's cognitive development can be stunted. Multiple cases of child abuse have resulted from non-biological caregivers. This refers to boyfriends and girlfriends of biological parents, as well as nannies and distant family members.
Nearly 700,000 children are abused in the U.S. annually. An estimated 683,000 children were victims of abuse and neglect in 2015. Neglect is the most common form of maltreatment. Of the children who experienced maltreatment or abuse, 3/4 suffered neglect. 17.2% suffered physical abuse, and 8.4% suffered sexual abuse. About 4 out of 5 abusers are the victim's parents. A parent of a child victim was the perpetrator in 78.1% of sustained cases of child maltreatment.
In 2012, a bill went through the legislative session that was a major legislative proposal that would change New Mexico Criminal Code to help better protect New Mexico children from child abuse and predators. Susan Martinez billed a brief up to prison time for child abuser, increases penalties for drunk drivers who kill children, and define new crimes where certain behavior towards children is predatory. According to the New Mexico 360 Quarterly Report from the State and County Profiles, second quarter SYF 2017, New Mexico Children, Youth, and Families Department Protective Services Division, there are 511,806 children in New Mexico. The following breakdown are the ages of children affected in New Mexico. In 2014, New Mexico had 36,774 total referrals for child abuse and neglect. Of those, 20,834 reports were referred to for investigation. In 2014, there were 7,606 victims of abuse or neglect in New Mexico, a rate of 15 per 1,000 children, increasing 16.5% from 2013. Of these children, 82.4% were neglected, 13.4% were physically abused, and 3.3% were sexually abused.
The most effective way to address child abuse is education. Educating the public on the definition and symptoms of child abuse, and teaching professionals how to identify neglect. A great assessment tool would be an examination and questionnaire administered by a health provider in the school system. Many school systems across America are taking measures to educate their teachers and give teachers the voice to speak up if abuse is detected. The following are 5 signs of abuse. Poor hygiene, including poor nutrition in general and visible poor health, indicative of failure to provide the basic needs of a developing child. Unaccounted for injuries, specifically hitting, slapping, kicking, shaking, burning, hair pulling, etc., indicative of physical abuse. Number 3, excessive sexual curiosity, genital sores, or pain, indicative of sexual abuse. Poor confidence and self-esteem, hiding eyes, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts and/or words, indicative of psychological abuse. And finally, number 5, major medical problems left untreated, indicative of medical neglect.
There are multiple advocate types in order to prevent child abuse. Everyone can be an advocate. Authority figures such as teachers, law enforcement, and religious leaders are influential in stopping child abuse. Everyone is able to identify signs and take action. Being a voice for someone who doesn't have a voice isn't a crime. Most of the time, people are concerned with being too involved when they are not involved enough. Other times, people are embarrassed or feel as if it's not their place. Everyone has a place to speak up and save a child's life. There are multiple resources and hotlines around the nation and specifically in New Mexico that are helpful for all forms of child abuse. People should feel comfortable to reach out to all of these sources and utilize them as much as possible in order to save a life.